Armstrong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think some of these things are new. When methamphetamine first started becoming a problem in the Midwest, it was primarily made locally. It was made in fish houses in Minnesota, in abandoned cabins in rural North Dakota, and local law enforcement actually did an incredibly good job of shutting it down. But in the law of unintended consequences, the cartels got significantly involved in methamphetamine and began trafficking it across the southern border, and it ended up in places like North Dakota and Minnesota and Chicago and every community all across the country. I just have one question, because we have a ton of law enforcement. Well, I have a bunch more questions, but I have one right now. Law enforcement experience at that table. In your professional judgment, is the percentage of drugs seized by law enforcement higher at ports of entry or higher between ports of entry? Ms. Chavez. Chief Chavez. Which one's it harder to get drugs across?
I would have to say, in my experience, harder to get across.
Yeah.
It would probably be the ports of entry.
Thank you. Chief Maudlin?
Thanks for the question, sir. Generally speaking, I would say that is probably correct when you look at how hardened some of the ports are, the technology. However, I would say, too, there are some ports that are in very rural areas that may be easier than
Oh, we
others.
have lots of them in North Dakota.
Yes, sir.
We're going to get to that in a second. Who makes the fentanyl? Chief
Sir,
Chavez. Go ahead, Chief Maudlin.
Yes, sir. As you described, my understanding is equal to yours, that in the beginning, oh, I'm sorry, fentanyl,
Yeah.
my head was still on meth.
Who's making the fentanyl?
Yeah, so the fentanyl is being produced, my understanding, in Mexico.
Okay. Chief Chavez?
Same briefings from our intelligence folks that it's a Mexico product.
So if it's being made in Mexico, I'm assuming it's being made by the cartels.
Correct, sir.
So regardless of who's bringing it across the border, U.S. citizens, ports of entry, between ports of entry, not ports of entry, the drugs that are killing people in my communities are being made by the cartels.
That is correct, sir.
Chief Maudlin, you testified earlier that nobody's crossing the southern border in your district, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what you said, without interacting with the cartels.
That is 100% correct, sir.
So the cartels are involved in the manufacture and trafficking of methamphetamine.
Yes, sir.
And they are involved in trafficking anybody who's trying to come across the southern border.
That's correct, sir.
So one of the things I'm having a hard time getting my head around is we skip that part. If there's a 12-year-old girl that's come from southern Mexico, Honduras, wherever, hasn't had a drink of water, you were talking about bathing, gets to the southern border, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want to give her a blanket and a hug. Like, that is part of being a human being, that is part of compassion, that is part we want. But what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are failing to recognize is in order to get there, they have to deal with a group of people that is not interested in human rights. They have no they place no value on humanity. If they can make money on it, they will exploit it. I think one of the mistakes we make quite often is we talk about them like they're drug cartels. They're in the business of making money. And whatever the path of least resistance is how they make money. So, Chief Chavez, I want to go back to you. In your sector, does anybody get to the border at this point without dealing with the cartels?
No, sir. They own the territory south of the border.
So the vulnerable mother deals with the cartels.
Correct.
The child deals with the cartels.
Correct.
Do they treat them well on these journeys?
No, sir.
Do they treat them well after they get here?
No, sir.
Are some of their family members enslaved, pressured, and do whatever in order to continue to pay them until they've worked off their fee?
They are. They're pretty much confined to whatever those cartels require in order to be able to see their family member again.
If you are a 14-year-old girl and you come to one of your stations and the cartels have threatened your mom, your dad, your family, your grandmother, any of those people, are they going to tell you the truth about what they have to do next?
Most of the time they will not, because they're afraid that their family may get hurt, or that they themselves will be injured or hurt.
So when we talk about the humanitarian crisis, and my friend Congressman Donalds went through these numbers, we are putting these people in the hands of cartels in their journey by our policies that we have set in the United States.
Many times these people, from the moment that they leave their front door at their point of origin, in the middle village of down south somewhere. They're already starting their exploitation from that point on.
Yeah, the Northern Triangle countries have a tremendous
the
amount
way
of
up to
gang
the border.
activity that is organized all the way through.
Correct.
Thank you. I yield back.